Hello and welcome to the Fish House Nation podcast. Joining us today is Laz Castillo II. Laz is a pro staffer with several ice fishing brands, including Eskimo, MarCum, and Elliott Rods. Laz, welcome to the Fish House Nation.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Thanks for having me here.
Laz, you live in Iowa now, but today we're talking about your home state, and it's a state that a lot of people don't think about when they think about ice fishing. We're talking Illinois today. What is it like ice fishing in Illinois?
You know, it's a different ballgame, that's for sure, compared to what you would think is a normal ice belt area or location per se. You don't think wooded areas in a busy hustle bustle city like Chicago. And if you do, you're thinking more of Lake Michigan and all the awesome species that you can catch there. But for me, what really hits home is the forest preserves. It's areas that are kind of protected per se from DNR and some of the other Chicago park districts where people can go and enjoy outdoor activities like ice fishing and things like that, And I was just thinking over and remembering some of the times I had when I was a little bit younger. And as I got more serious about ice fishing, it's crazy just to see the amount of gear and stuff that I have now. Because back in the day or when I first started ice fishing and in these forest preserves, there's no room to put an ice castle or a Yeti or something like that out on the ice. It's your jetty sled, you got a bucket, maybe a rod or two, some tip ups and some bait, and you're going, to see floatable bibs and shacks and all this other stuff. It's a whole nother level of ice fishing that, I just wasn't aware of, I guess, because you're kind of in that hustle bustle city aspect, I guess.
Yeah, but what is that fishing like, Laz? I mean, you're out there, and I'm sure Chicago. It doesn't have a big ice fishing culture. It's there's so many other things to do in the city, and ice fishing isn't probably near the priority list of anybody. So, what is it like when you're out there fishing in an area like that?
It's especially if you're from the city, it's a place where you get to just relax, right? It's where you get to go to be with yourself and just think about stuff. And when you're constantly on the go and you're constantly with the hustle and bustle of a big city like Chicago, you got to go somewhere. You got to find that thing that you're passionate about, where you can just go and be by yourself. And what's great about ice fishing, as so many anglers know, is not only do you get the piece and aspect of it if you want to go by yourself, but going with a buddy, introducing someone to the sport and going out and just having a good time that doesn't involve, a lot of money or going to a show or things like that, So nice to be outdoors in a big city, I guess.
Yeah, you're fishing that urban environment. What is the fishing like? I mean, what is it? You're in Iowa now. You've got access to lots of great places to fish. What is the actual fishing like when you're fishing in a place like this?
Yeah, sure. So usually it's stocked by the DNR, just like places out here in Iowa. But the difference is we don't have just one big lake per se. There are little ponds or a place that I used to fish quite a bit is called Bussy Woods. And it's a 3-pool area. And each pool is kind of stocked a little bit differently. So the bottom pool would be stocked with like trout. You do an inland trout stamp and program like that. And then you go up and it gets really weedy. So you got more of your predator fish. They have, anywhere from walleye to pike and a few muskie. And then the other pool is more of like your panfish and bass. So you kind of have a variety of species all within a body of water at different locations that are stocked, So I guess for me, it was easy to pick out what fish I wanted to fish for, come any particular day. If one day I wanted to fish for toothy critters, then I'd go over to this pool. And if I wanted to go for my panfish, then I'd go to a different pool and things like that. The other thing that I noticed or that I found that was really, for me, different is I was used to using different kinds of baits. Obviously we had the typical minnows and wax worms and spikes and things like that. But there's a bait shop back home. It's called Anglers International, and they sell these things, and they're called golden roach minnows. And they have like a goldish yellow to them. And back home, predator fish love these things for bait. If I remember correctly, Illinois, you can't use actual shiners. It's illegal there because they carry the VHS disease and things like that. So a lot of bait shops, you can't go and just pick up a shiner or whatever bait that you're looking for like that. So we would use the golden roach minnows, and man, it's a blast. But moving to Iowa and things like that, and then talking to different bait shops here, I have yet to really find one that can get them in and that I can use.
Yeah, it's funny, the regionalities of bait. I fished out in South Dakota a couple of years ago in the summertime looking for panfish, and I love leaf worms. And I started talking to the guys in South Dakota about leaf worms, and they had no idea what I was talking about. So it's interesting how one place they like one type of bait, and somewhere else they've never heard about it. But what else? What other kind of maybe techniques or things that you would use there that maybe people that are fishing in Minnesota haven't thought about or don't use?
Being shallow, a lot of shallow fisheries. We're not talking 30, 40 plus feet. Bussy Woods, where I used to fish, like I was just talking about for ice fishing, I think the deepest spot, maybe 20 feet at the deepest spot. So you're catching perch and bigger walleye. I mean, we're talking, 28 plus, 30 plus northern pike in 2-3 feet of water, jigging, or a little tip up. If you're got a little pocket somewhere, a 10-foot pocket that's deep, you just kind of drop your tip up down there, and just totally different, I guess, from Iowa. Here we have our state parks and things like that, and huge designated reservoirs, that get relatively deep, 30, 40 plus feet. And that's, to me, that was something totally new that I just wasn't expecting.
In a lot of these bodies of water that you're talking about, they're not, we're not talking about 300-400 acre lakes. I mean, we're talking about pretty small pieces of water. How do you break something like that down? How do you fish something like that? Especially when we get up here in the northern parts of the ice belt in the United States, guys are fishing lakes like Mille Lacs, and they're fishing these big bodies of water. They can pull up navionics. They can find the structure. And a lot of these small ponds, there's not even any data out there on them, and you kind of have to go down out there and figure out yourself. Talk a little bit about that and how you do that.
Yeah, first of all, you pick a species that you're interested in. My thing is panfish. I love catching panfish. There's just something about bluegill and crappie and perch that I just, I absolutely love. But really, just using tools that we have now, navionics, Google Earth, so I'll pick a body of water that I'm interested in fishing for the day. And I would go and just, talk to people at bait shops like, Anglers International that I was, talking about earlier. We don't have a Bass Pro Shop or a Cabela's or something, dead splat in the city of Chicago. You got to go out to the farther suburbs to do that. Most of our places are mom and pop shops, and they're more than willing to share information. If you just go in and talk to the guys, you say, hey, look, I'm new to the area, or I've never fished this lake, and I'm really into catching crappies. What do you guys suggest? Are you talking basins? Are we talking weed lines? I like the weed lines. I'm a big weed line fisherman. And then I just go back to Google Earth, and I, use the time frame to see where maybe the water was lowest, or maybe there's some sunken brush somewhere. Or, in the summer, you see the weed lines really build up in a certain part of the lake. So that's where I would tend to head first. And then just putting the time in. Maybe the first 2 or 3 times out isn't fun for you, but give it time, discover the lake, and maybe take a buddy out there with you and have a good time. And you'll find out exactly what's that lake has available for you.
You're ice fishing in Chicago, in the city. Tell me about really kind of what that experience is like, and we were talking before about, planes flying overhead and just a different type of atmosphere. What is it like if you were going to talk to somebody about something that they haven't experienced before?
Absolutely. It's nice to be out again and be by yourself and be peaceful, but it's totally different when you see a Boeing jumbo jet flying over your head. Close enough to, you can shoot a bottle rocket at or something. You can smell the jet fuel sometimes from, how close these planes are to you. And that's just a different experience for people, again, who aren't familiar with a big city feel, It's awesome, man. I don't know how I even describe it to you other than that. I mean, it's a great experience. It's totally different. It's a totally different, even Milwaukee, right? Like there's a lot of guys who fish like the Milwaukee harbors and things like that. I mean, just the difference from Milwaukee Harbor to Chicago, it's a big difference.
Yeah, a little different atmosphere. I remember as a child. I actually grew up in Northern Illinois too, but I remember my uncle taking me down to downtown Chicago. He was in the produce business, and we would go
Okay.
down and buy all the produce for him to sell at his business. We were about an hour away. We'd drive into town, and definitely some characters in those areas, and they people are willing to share lots of information, not just fishing information, but a lot of
Yeah.
stuff you're going to learn, especially as a young boy walking around in some of those areas down there. But what is the season like down there? How long does the ice season last? When do you typically get ice? When are you typically walking off the ice?
Uh, you know, really it depends. I would say probably middle to late January, mostly is when ice begins to form. Safe ice, 3 inches plus. I can't really remember a winter where ice has gotten over, say maybe 12 inches, and that's a really cold winter. When we had that polar vortex a few years back, I think that was one of the thickest ice that I can recall. But besides that, I mean, we're talking, your average 4 or 5 inches, 6, 7 inches, if that, but nothing like what you're going to see on these lakes in Minnesota. We're not talking 14 inches and things like that, or even, on boundary waters up north, things like that. You're not going to see that kind of ice depth that you do, obviously in a city like Chicago.
Yeah, so with those, you don't have the ice season, you don't have the depth of ice. How about equipment? And you kind of mentioned earlier, not as much equipment. What are some things that you may not see out in those areas that you would see if we were going to go, fishing in the Twin Cities metro?
Sure. A lot of guys, because a lot of these forest preserves are pretty shallow bodies of water, believe it or not, a lot of guys don't use flashers. You literally sit on a bucket, like I said, with a rod or maybe a tip up in a rod and some waxies, and you just kind of go for it. Now, you get to some of the bigger bodies of water, like up north and chain of lakes and things like that, then it's a little bit of a different ball game. Things are a bit deeper. You got, more species of fish all in one area. Ice is a bit thicker, a little bit deeper, things like that. But flashers for a lot of these guys are almost like new idea or like new technology to them. I didn't start off with a flasher. I didn't even know what a flasher was until obviously I got a little bit more involved in ice fishing and the ice industry back home. But literally, it's one of those old jet sleds, those black jet sleds, and it's a bucket, it's a couple rods, it's a tip up, maybe a chair if you don't want to sit on a rod, and that's it. No flasher, no shacks. A lot of guys aren't bringing shacks out there, at least in the forest reserves they're not. Because you can't keep anything on those waters anyways. You can't keep a shack out there too long. You can't keep again, like I said, a Yeti and things like that out there. Most of these park districts that run these forest reserves, they close them early. Sundown happens and you don't even get to really hit a night bite, and that was something new to me, even moving to Iowa, was being able to stay out and sun's going down and a lot of guys are just still on the ice, and you're able to fish. I was totally shocked. I was kind of panicked. I'm getting ready for someone to come yell at me or tell me to get off the ice, and it didn't happen. I was kind of like, man, this is great. This is a whole new experience.
Well, Laz, it was great talking to you about this stuff. There's something about this forest preserve fishing that you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask you about tonight?
No. Just again, like you said, you don't think of Chicago or even Illinois really as an ice fishing mecca. People aren't lining up to go there. But if you got time, you want to try something different, you just want to experience something different, give it a shot. It's fun still, and I can't talk enough about it, man.
Awesome. Laz Castillo. I see you on Ice Fishing Minnesota all the time, talking with people there in the Facebook group, but do you have an Instagram or anything like that you want to promote?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Cuban Redneck 27. You can also find me on Facebook, Laz Castillo II.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Laz. Really appreciate it.
Chris, thanks for having me, man. It's been a pleasure.